Let's compare the battery pack configuration of a Sabertrio Arclyte stunt saber to a few stunt sabers from Ultrasabers. So this is an Ultrasabers Aeon V4 and an Ultrasabers Dominix V2. So first thing you may notice is the Sabertrio Arclyte has a protective chassis around the battery pack, and that helps to keep the batteries in place. So the chassis is the perfect diameter to fit inside of the hilt, and to get the batteries out, you just kind of pull the battery pack gently out of the chassis, and then you do have the same setup after that as kind of the Ultrasabers setup. Just has this neat chassis to kind of keep it locked into place. And then you can slide it back in pretty easily. So if we look at these Ultrasabers hilts, this one here comes with, this is the Aeon V4 with the standard battery setup, has a Velcro piece, and that is intended to kind of keep the batteries in place. Sometimes it doesn't work all that well. And then here's the Dominix V2. That didn't even come with Velcro. I think the V2 models don't come with Velcro, or sometimes don't come with Velcro, possibly because it's a little bit of a snug fit to get this battery pack in this kind of smaller diameter lightsaber hilt. So it is a problem I've found with some Ultrasabers hilts, that the batteries will jiggle loose, and so you might go to turn on a saber and find that it doesn't turn on, and one of the first things you'd want to look for is see if one of the batteries kind of jiggled loose. So it's somewhat of a common problem. Now with Sabertrio and that chassis really keeps the batteries in place. That's not going to be too much of an issue. Now another way that the batteries stay in place with the Sabertrio is the chassis actually gets sort of locked in. So here is the kind of screw hole for the cover tech wheel, and you align the chassis. See, the chassis has this hole right here that you line up, and I know a lot of people wonder how difficult is it to line up the hole. I haven't found too much difficulty with it. It does add an extra step though. Now let's see if I can actually do that. So you just kind of line it up and put the cover tech wheel back on, get it kind of tight enough, and then you can sort of see, it's maybe a little hard to see, this doesn't move around at all. So the battery pack will not move. Maybe I can use a lightsaber to show that. So they're using the Ultrasabers lightsaber to show you where the chassis is. And then your final step would be to put the pommel back on the hilt. Now, with Ultrasabers, it is a lot simpler. So you just kind of tuck the battery pack in the hilt and then put the pommel back on. But it can rattle around. Like you can hear that sound a little bit. That's the battery pack rattling around. And it's fairly easy for, say, one of the batteries. It doesn't take too much. You know, one of the batteries will just kind of pop out slightly like that. And then, oh, that's not enough. You'll just have it kind of not off totally, but it just won't, it'll be off enough so that you can't turn on the saber. Of course, I can't intentionally do that very well. But you can see here that there's not very much space for the battery pack to fit back into this V2 saber. There's also not too much threading for the V2 pommel. And so there we go. Now we have the pommel back on all of the Sabers, but I really love the battery pack chassis that is included with the Sabertrio hilts. It's a really awesome feature. Doesn't rattle around, stays in place very well. Now there are a few more steps to get the batteries out, so that's maybe the main downside of that. You have to unscrew this, take out the chassis, and then kind of pull the batteries out of the chassis in order to change them or whatnot. But I think the added steps are kind of worth it. But anyway, that's just a quick look at the battery setup of the Sabertrio Arclyte stunt saber with and compared with the Ultrasabers Aeon V4 and Dominix V2, and all of them run on 4 AAA batteries.